So let's talk about this little entity section right here and why completing it thoroughly is so important. Stay tuned. Welcome back, TC team. I know. I've been away. I've just been crazy busy and I truly apologize. If you've been looking for new videos, I never meant to be away for so long. Just time just kind of got the best of things. I know a lot of you that I work with, we do talk sometimes daily. So I've been around, but nevertheless, I do miss creating videos and I'm hoping to start creating more content for you all this year. So if there's a topic that maybe you're interested in or have questions about, please feel free to let me know down below. I'm totally open to suggestions. So just toss some things at me. I appreciate your input. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you're not subscribed, please take the time to do so now. I actually have over 100 of you subscribed. It's so exciting. I really cannot thank you enough for your support. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you. And please share this with others. If you think that this content might be helpful to someone, maybe a situation arises where this will be useful, please share. Thank you so much. So let's talk about entities. So let's start with the basics. What is an entity? So as it relates to real estate, the simplest way I can put it is ownership outside of a natural person. So this would commonly be something like a trust, probate, company like an LLC or corporation. This would also include power of attorney. So basically anything that is not a real person. And this ownership must be disclosed. So an easy way for us to do so is through representative capacity options, either the RCSD form or this neat little entity section that has been awesomely built into our contract. So basically what your RCSD or entity section does is disclose to the broker and or the buyer or seller that whenever you see this person's signature, they are signing on behalf of this entity with this title. So keep that in mind. This lovely section was created to replace having a separate RCSD form. So that helps us all save paper. So let's break this down. Now, I'm not going to go into how to complete this section line by line in this video, but if that's something that you'd like me to cover, please let me know down below in the comment section, or you can email me at tcteam@mercedesco.com and I'd be happy to prepare a video walking you through that. So please let me know. I appreciate that. So what I really want to talk about in this video is what information goes into what I feel are the three most important items of this section to complete it thoroughly. And this includes the RCSD form too. So I'm going to consider this video as part one, because after this, we're going to have a story time. And I'm going to tell you how this little entity section literally demolished a transaction. So when you're done with this video, please watch the next one. It's pretty crazy. So now, in my opinion, there are three major components of this section that are highly important. So number one is, who is the buyer or seller? Now, those of you who work with me often, we've likely had this discussion, but simply put, the buyer or seller is the name of the entity. For example, the name of the trust, the full legal name of the trust, the name of the estate, maybe the name of the LLC or the corporation. That is the name of the buyer or the seller throughout the contract. So when you're preparing your listing or purchase agreements, this should be the name that gets printed beneath the signing line as the seller or buyer throughout your document. So their name gets input here. The next important component is the legally authorized signer. Now remember our definition, since an entity is not a natural person, it can't sign for anything on itself. It would also need to have an appointed party or parties who are authorized to sign on its behalf. So this would be the legal name of the person who's authorized to sign. So however they would sign their name, that's what you would put. And a lot of you have heard this example from me, but let's say you work for ABC Broker, okay? You would never see an actual signature say ABC Broker. It would always be signed by your actual broker, your office manager, even yourself as the salesperson. You don't sign ABC broker, you sign your real name. It is the very same concept here, okay? The legally authorized signer is appointed to sign on behalf of the entity. So that person's name gets input here. Now, the third important item here is their title. So what does this mean and why do you need it? It's almost always left empty in our contracts. So every appointed person has a title. For example, I'm the president of my corporation. So my title is president. If there's a trust, likely that authorized person is a trustee in some capacity, maybe co-trustee, successor trustee, maybe they're just trustee, but that is their official title, okay? With an LLC, oftentimes that title is maybe member. I've seen that a lot. If you're dealing with a court situation, like let's say probate, they're usually administrator or executor. Even with the power of attorney, when there's a power of attorney document in place, that person's title is attorney in fact. So in any capacity, there's going to be a title associated with that, and that title goes here. When you're completing these sections of the contract, it's very important that you know this information ahead of time so that you can properly complete it to the best of your ability. So where do you get this information from? Well, first, when you're preparing your listing or purchase agreements, just ask the buyer or seller how they currently hold or plan to hold title of the property. If they state something other than their natural self, that is how you're going to prepare your contract. And you'll want to let the buyer or seller know that you will need the supporting documentation to verify that they are authorized to sign in such capacity. Huge piece of this. Now, with this part, it's a huge topic of discussion, at least in my real estate world. Every day, someone opposes this with me. So most people don't want to give this documentation. They don't want to give it to anybody except title and escrow. However, I'm just going to spill the beans and let you know that this supporting paperwork is contractually due within 3 days. Okay. So I'm asked all the time, why am I asking for this information and who needs this document? Who is it going to be shared with, right? So this explanation is within the contracts. Right now, I'm going to refer to the CAR December 2024 versions of the residential listing and purchase agreements. If you're reviewing a different listing or purchase agreement, like maybe a vacant land, residential income, something like that, it may have a different paragraph number, but the paragraph is still there and it's still relevant. And the heading of the paragraph is in bold print and it will read, legally authorized signer. So within the RLA, it's paragraph 22. And within the RPA, it's paragraph 32. So they're pretty much identical, but I do encourage you to read them both and understand what they say. But to quickly summarize them, in regards to that entity information, it states that where you see this person's signature or initials, it is represented as this entity and that entity exists in good standing in California. And a copy of the supporting documentation will be provided within 3 days of this completed agreement. Now, also within the RPA, paragraph 3N5, which also refers to paragraph 32 for further explanation, also reminds everybody this is due within 3 days. So whatever information the buyer or seller provides to you here needs to be supported. Remember, this entity section is just a disclosure. It just states when you see this person's signature, it represents this entity. It is not proof of said entity, okay? So I wanted to clarify that because a lot of agents push back when I ask for this information, thinking that they've already provided this by giving a completed entity section or a separate RCSD. I totally understand that this is often a touchy request. A lot of you will see us ask for a copy of this documentation. And to be honest, a lot of agents, including buyers and sellers, they're really hesitant to share this information. I understand it's private, but you can review bullet point 2 in that legally authorized signer paragraph of the RPA. And it clearly states that this documentation must be provided to both escrow and the other party within 3 days of acceptance. I've even had escrow officers tell me they can't share it without permission from either the buyer or seller in writing. And although I totally understand their company policy, we are only asking because buyer and seller have technically already agreed to do so by entering into the agreement. So if escrow will not provide a copy, which they don't have to, it is now up to the buyer or the seller to pass that on to the other side for them because it is a contractual requirement. Okay. So although it has always been customary, I know at least in our area, we let escrow provide that documentation within a final closing package for so long. But the biggest problem with this is timing. It all comes down to that 3-day rule. So how are we going to meet that 3-day rule if we wait until we receive a broker package? So when we're asking, just know we're just trying to keep the file in compliance. So why is all this important? Why do we need this? I'm just going to end this video here by asking you to consider this. If you don't have the correct signers, do you have a valid contract? Let's get into this story time. I will meet you right here in part 2.